Welcome to Phenomenon Radio, the show that covers thought-provoking breakthroughs in the fields of UAP UFOs to discover fascinating truths, first-hand accounts, and investigative insights into the expanding confluence of physical and mental exposure to this worldwide phenomenon. Hosted by Emmy award-winning investigative journalists, Earthfiles reporter and editor Linda Moulton Howe, and world-renowned experiencer of the 1980 Rendlesham Bentwaters incident, John Burroughs. And now, leading off tonight's program, here's Linda Moulton Howe.
6 months ago, on December 16, 2017, the now historic headline on the front page of the New York Times headlined, "Glowing Auras and Black Money, the Pentagon's Mysterious UFO Program." Embedded in the web version of the story was an infrared gun camera video shot by a pilot in a Navy F-A-18 Super Hornet of an unknown object called the Tic Tac UFO. On the infrared video was a 46-foot-long estimate, white oval UFO like a Tic Tac candy. The New York Times credit under the video says, quote, "It was released by the Defense Department's Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program. Credit image by U.S. Department of Defense," close quote. The accompanying article says the Threat Identification Program, quote, "investigated reports of unidentified flying objects, also known as UFOs, according to Defense Department officials. It was run by a military intelligence official, Luis Elizondo, on the 5th floor of the Pentagon Sea Ring. The Defense Department has never before acknowledged the existence of the program, which it says it shut down in 2012, but its backers say that while the Pentagon ended funding for the program, it remains in existence. For the past 5 years, they say, officials with the program have continued to investigate UFO episodes brought to them by service members, while also carrying out their other Defense Department duties. Mr. Elizondo has now joined electrical engineer and physicist Mr. Hal Puthoff and another former Defense Department official, Christopher K. Mellon, who was a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Intelligence, and they have joined in a new commercial venture called To the Stars Academy of Arts and Science, founded by Blink 182 musician Tom DeLonge. They are speaking publicly about their efforts as their venture aims to raise money for research into UFOs. Close quote. Excerpts from the New York Times, December 16th, 2017. Then, about 4 months later, on April 3rd, 2018, the film and music news website Consequence of Sound reported, quote, "Tom DeLonge, founder and owner of To the Stars, Inc., announces Secret Machines, Book 2, A Fire Within, the latest in his ongoing UFO fiction series," close quote. It is the sequel to 2016's Secret Machines, Book 1, Chasing Shadows. Though those two books are fiction, Tom DeLonge says they are based on, quote, "facts and actual events gleaned from the author's sources within the scientific, military, and intelligence communities surrounding unidentified aerial phenomena," close quote. Now, in between those two fiction based on fact books, DeLonge collaborated with acclaimed nonfiction investigator and author Peter Levenda to produce the first of 3 nonfiction companion books to the Secret Machines series. That first nonfiction book from Peter Levenda and DeLonge's To the Stars company is the 433-page Volume 1, Gods, Man, and War, released in March 2016 with a foreword by astronomer and author Jacques Vallée. Peter Levenda is a native of the Bronx who has been investigating and writing about the connections that exist between politics, religion, and history since the 1970s. His first book, Unholy Alliance, A History of Nazi Involvement with the Occult, was published in 1994 with a foreword by Norman Mailer and has been translated into half a dozen foreign languages. Since then, he has published Sinister Forces, a grimoire of American political witchcraft. It's a 3-volume magnum opus that searches for the meaning behind some of the strangest aspects of American political assassinations and their relation to a mysterious group known as the Nine. Peter's research has taken him to Chile during the Pinochet regime to investigate Nazi war criminals, and to Chinese military bases and prisons, Indian and Javanese temples all over Southeast Asia, where he lived for nearly 10 years, and throughout Europe and Latin America. He has a master's degree in religious and Asian studies from Florida International University and is a member of the American Academy of Religion, as well as the Association of Former Intelligence Officers. In his acknowledgments at the beginning of Volume 1, Gods, Man, and War, Peter Levenda writes, quote, "So many individuals have gone on before to research, write, speak, and even at times risk their reputations, if not their lives, where the phenomenon is concerned. It is inconceivable that more people do not take this enduring mystery more seriously," close quote. After a short break, Peter Levenda will join us on Phenomenon Radio to bring us up to date on what is happening with To the Stars and the controversial attacks on Tom DeLonge, Peter, and others, plus buzz about alleged secret briefings for some congressmen by To the Stars military and science consultants.
Thank you, Linda. You're listening to Phenomenon Radio live on the KGRA digital broadcasting station. Tonight's guest, Peter Levenda, will join the show right after these messages.
Hi, it's AJ from Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit. Have you been searching for unique items to create or add to your sacred space? What about tools for your holistic healing? Or those one-of-a-kind magical ingredients to manifest your desires? Well, look no more, because Vibes has a variety of items to assist you in your spiritual journey. From crystals to candles, incense to books, tapestries to jewelry, OnlineVibes.com has what you're seeking. We even have some thoughtful and mindful gifts to share with your friends and family too. Visit us at OnlineVibes.com from the comfort of your home, or give us a call at 385-244-1099 to have your order beautifully packaged and sent directly to you or a loved one. And right now, take advantage of the coupon code KGRA at checkout to receive 15% off any order. Remember, online, VIBEC.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi, Vancouver. George Norrie here, inviting you to join me and producer Tom Danheiser on June 30th at the 4th Annual Architects of the New Paradigm Conference. This will be a groundbreaking, jam-packed event featuring Stephen Bassett, Grant Cameron, Richard Dolan, Daniel Sheehan, Johnny Enoch, and Victor Vigiani. You don't want to miss this one, so watch the 3-minute video and get tickets at anpconference.com. That's anpconference.com. anpconference.com.
You listen to us, and we listen to you. And so does the CIA. KGRARadio.com.
Welcome back to Phenomenon Radio for tonight's interview with Peter Levenda. To start tonight's interview, here's Linda Moulton Howe. Linda?
Hey, thanks, Bill. And Peter Levenda, it is just great to have you back with us on Phenomenon Radio.
It's great to be here, Linda. Thanks for inviting me.
And we had a great discussion in July on a wide range of facets about UFOs. But today, what I wondered is if we could start with a comment that you made in the recent Contact in the Desert panel discussion, where you and I and about 7 or 8 others were all lined up in the recent Contact in the Desert. And that Fade to Black radio host Jimmy Church asked you about the recent release by To the Stars to George Knapp at Channel 8 in Las Vegas, and that what was released was a 13-page document entitled Executive Briefing about the Tic Tac UFO video that has been attacked. This executive briefing has been attacked all over the place as a phony document. And I thought you gave some insightful explanations and wondered if you could start there tonight on Phenomenon Radio.
Sure, I'll try to do my best. It was attacked as a phony document by people who just took it to the as kind of a foregone conclusion that it must be a phony document. If you go through the document very carefully, you will see that a lot of people are referenced, a lot of incidents are talked about in great detail. Part of the problem that people had was they didn't see certain markings on the pages they felt should have been there. But this was an executive summary of what was probably a much larger, much more detailed report or series of reports. It is not a complete breakdown of the entire event, obviously, for obvious reasons. So what you have is an executive summary of a larger report. But more importantly, why would this be a phony or fraudulent document? That part sort of took me aback because I didn't understand why people would have assumed automatically that it must be phony. What would be the purpose behind that? We had released, or To the Stars plus the Department of Defense and everybody else involved in this had released the Tic Tac video, had released some additional documentation about that. Lou Elizondo himself had gone on a couple of places, podcast and radio interviews and that sort of thing, discussing that event in some detail. And I think that the document supports the data that Lou Elizondo was talking about his interview. So I don't see any conflict. In fact, I see a lot more information contained in that document.
Well, remember, I asked you that in my own experience with documents, that when something is absolutely real from the Pentagon or from an intel agency, there are usually letters and numbers at the top and the bottom of every page. And you gave me a thought about that I had not heard before.
Well, it might be that the markings on that document were, for whatever reason, themselves classified. Sometimes you'll have a classified document that has a digraph or a prefix in front of it, like MK Ultra, for instance, the famous mind control program. So it's possible that because of the secrecy of a certain type of ongoing project, they would want to withhold the digraph. They would want to withhold the security classification record. They may want to withhold that and give you the information. Usually it's the other way around. You're going to find out that there's a classification number, but or a name, a cryptonym, but there will be no document that you can see because it's classified. So it can go either way, and it depends upon who's doing the classification, what agency of the government, what branch of the government's doing the classification.
Well, now, do you think that the Defense Intelligence Agency would be the agency releasing this executive summary?
I don't know which agency released it. My initial feeling is that it would be the DIA, but I don't have any proof of that because no one's run that by me. So I don't know who actually was responsible for it.
Well, John Greenwald and others, they were polite and respectful, but they went through the executive summary and they had criticisms in this sense that they called it a cut and paste, meaning that it had been put together specifically to hand carry to George Knapp to put out as a new release from To the Stars, and that the criticism was that the cut and paste was not classified, but was put together to look classified.
I'm not following the logic of that at all, really. I'm sorry. Okay, there's too many things to unpack in the statement you just made. Number one, that To the Stars somehow prepared the document, which is not true. To the Stars is not preparing documents like that. And To the Stars cannot declassify a document either, obviously. So all To the Stars can do is wait until a document is declassified. Now, the people who are members of To the Stars, they may have, ways to make phone calls or ask for documents to be declassified or whatever that happens to be. But To the Stars, in the first place, will be the receiver of these documents as opposed to people actually doing the declassification. So that's number one. Number two, if the DOD or the DIA or any version thereof had decided to put a quote unquote cut and paste document together to give George Knapp, I don't see a problem with that. That's, again, an executive summary of a much larger body of information that was put on paper for the purpose of releasing it to the public with some redactions, as we've seen. So I don't follow the logic why this would be a problem. I don't know what is being implied by that, actually.
Well, there was the chain of custody criticism about, I believe it was the tic-tac-toe that had been released back in 2004 and ended up with a German company and then bounced back allegedly to the Pentagon, and therefore it had broken chain of custody?
Oh, no, you're talking about two different things. The leak of information about the tic-tac was a leak, as far as I understand. It was not an official report by DOD or an official release by DOD. It was something that was leaked and bounced around. There's stuff like that all over the place. The importance of the December 16th revelation is that it came from the government. It was the government basically saying, yes, there's UFOs, and here's an example. That's what's important. If somebody had leaked it before, that's another problem. That's up to whoever did the leaking and et cetera, et cetera. But what happened on December 16th, 2017 was through official channels. That's why we had that conversation, for instance, about the New York Times. The New York Times, which released this story and broke the story, would not have done that without having had all the backstops understood and all of the background confirmation from various sources in place before they released that story. So the December 16th, 2017 report and the video and everything that came with it is as official as you can get. So that, to me, is the main story. The other leaks and the other people who were bouncing around a couple of years before, I just don't know where they got the information, why they did it, or who did the leaking, etc. No idea.
Well, Peter, I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah.
Eric Davis came on our show, said Bigelow Industries was hired, and that's part of what was done through Harry Reid to analyze these videos and write a report. So if Bigelow Industries was given these videos, and I would assume they were classified when they were given to Bigelow, and Davis and company had to have certain classifications to review these videos because when they received them, they had not been technically released or declassified, then they would have had to write a report, which is what he said. So why couldn't a summary just be a summary that was written through the BASS, through the BASS, what they did through BASS? Why couldn't a summary just have been the executive summary, or part of what they did and how they reviewed these videos and everything else?
I mean, it may very well have been exactly that. Because BASS was working with ATIP and they were, sort of involved with each other to that extent where they were exchanging, from what I understand, this type of classified information. You're at the point where you're trying to figure out, well, who's on first? Is it BASS, or is it ATIP, or is it somebody else that's involved in the ultimate decision to declassify and release this material? BASS would have been, I assume, involved in trying to understand and trying to analyze the video. And remember, it's not only the video. There's a lot of other reports that would have been attached to it. There would have been reports by the commander of the Nimitz. There would have been reports by the pilots. There would have been a lot of other ancillary information to flesh out what happened with that video. So you're talking about the video, much of which is probably classified, not because of a UFO reason necessarily, I don't know, but possibly because of sources and methods, possibly because they don't want to reveal how communications are conducted between the Nimitz, for instance, and the Hornets, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of other considerations here. It's not as cut and dried. So yes, go on.
Well, that brings up an interesting point. Okay. One or several people, including pilots that analyzed the video, said it appears to have been dubbed. Would they have dubbed it? Because Favors never said it was, and he obviously was involved, but I don't know if he was ever asked that question. But would they have gone in and altered the video, and just for that reason that you brought up, because they didn't want to give away certain communications techniques?
I don't think so, because if they were going to dub it, they could have probably dubbed the whole thing, right? I think that, the dubbing doesn't pass the smell test for me, that particular type of charge, because the video is quite short, as everybody's been complaining to me for months. So I think the dubbing doesn't make sense to me. But the video and the reports that came out with it also, turn this all around the other side. Who benefits by the government releasing a video saying it's real, but having the pilots' voices dubbed? At a certain point, the logic stream kind of breaks down. If you're going to release the video and you're going to cut a video which is much longer, and you're going to cut it down to a couple of seconds, to like 30 seconds or so, and release that, I think that's what you're going to do. You're going to release just the part you feel comfortable releasing.
Right, but the problem is the DOD denies that they released it.
Well, yeah, I've heard that story as well.
Well, no, that they did. They followed up with the interview, and they said they didn't have anything to do with the release.
John and Peter, that this does go back to the question I was going to finish that first arc of questions with, that why was it that within the week of December 16th to the 23rd, that there was on, I think it was like page 6 of the New York Times, that it said Pentagon denies knowledge of video release.
Okay, who at the Pentagon denied knowledge of the video release? There probably were a lot of people at the Pentagon who had no clue that the video was being released because they were not part of the declassification process or the release process.
Peter, when you go to the Pentagon, you go through public affairs. Public affairs goes to the agency involved, contacts them and talks to them, and comes back and gives an official response. It's not half, baked when they do that. I was in the military for 26 years.
Yeah, it's not a question of half baked, John. What I'm trying to say is that you're dealing with an enormous bureaucracy, and it's very possible that public affairs had no knowledge of this because everybody was kind of taken aback when ATIP was revealed on December. Nobody had any clue about that. And it did go through the Times through an enormous vetting process before they could report the story. And it went right through the publishers of the Times who knew they had a good story. That means they were not getting a bunch of documents that happened to show up in a manila envelope. It had to have come from within DOD for them to have been satisfied that they had the real thing.
Yeah, but Elizondo technically was still DOD when they were working on the story. He didn't resign until October, right before the story broke.
He resigned in October. The story didn't break till December.
But they were working on the story in October.
When he resigned.
Can you verify that 100%, or was he the leak?
No. He resigned in October. He was on the stage in October.
I understand
when
that, but the New York Times, when did they start working on the story?
When he was out.
The day after he was out. That was the first time they knew anything about it.
I wasn't there, so I don't know exactly what day they started, but in general terms, the timeline is he left DOD in October. When they made the announcement in Las Vegas, with everybody else standing on the stage, that was October 11th. He was already out by then.
Right, but do you see the problem with this? Okay, when you came on and made a fair statement, if you're not in the know for classified stuff, that, To the Stars couldn't do this. But technically, To the Stars is a bunch of guys that worked and have worked inside the Department of Defense, at least as contractors. So they've had access to these videos. They've had access to these other documents and reports. Davis has confirmed that himself on our show. Then they turn around and come out, and you make the comment that they couldn't have done that. Well, technically, they maybe should have done it, but if they had access to all this and they did an executive summary, what's to say if the summary itself wasn't classified or had been declassified that they didn't release it themselves to them?
Who's they? I lost.
I'm Davis and Company, To the Stars. They're all part of To the Stars. They did the BASS work through Bigelow.
Yeah, they worked through BASS. That's true, right? Yeah. Okay.
And then they turn around and then they come out publicly in October, and this starts the ball rolling for the New York Times article. But technically, they're still working for the government because Bigelow still has a contract to the government, still has classifications. These guys are still holding their security clearances. According to Elizondo, he still holds his, which means he's a contractor now. And they're working on all this, and yet these documents are being leaked.
Okay, the fact that Elizondo still has a security clearance does not mean he's a contractor?
He can't have a security clearance. No, he can't. That is, you go back and you look at the law. You only keep your security clearance if you're continuing to work for some aspect inside DOD. Once you resign or retire, it's either suspended, or if you're continuing to work inside in some capacity, even as a contractor, it stays active.
Peter, go ahead.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say here is that Lou Elizondo was actually asked this question not that long ago, and that interview was actually on the To the Stars website. And I think that's the interview when he was asked specifically if he, about his security clearance, and he said, "I think I still have it. I don't know." So I mean, he didn't come out and say, "Yes, I'm still under a security clearance." He may have an NDA in effect, which is going to outlast any security clearance, but he doesn't know if he still holds a security clearance. The last time I heard him talk.
Is he still working for Bigelow?
I have no clue. I don't believe he ever worked for Bigelow. I think he worked for the DOD. Okay. He was running ATIP.
Okay, so once he's retired, he's doing nothing more for Bigelow or any kind of government contract, to your knowledge.
You're asking me about his personal relationships with Bigelow, and I have no clue. I have no idea about any of that. All I know is that he left DOD. He sent a resignation letter into Mattis, from what I understand, and now he's working for To the Stars Academy. So more than that, what his status is for a security clearance or who he might still be contracting for or I have no clue.
Okay, but doesn't it look a little suspicious that they overlap with the To the Stars, overlaps with Bigelow overlaps with government contracts, and it all ties neatly together?
Yeah, if you have a conspiratorial frame of mind, but I was there since 2014 when this whole thing was pulled together. And, I'm not working for Bigelow or ATIP or anybody else. In fact, I'm not even a spokesperson for To the Stars, but I was there when Tom decided at the end of 2014 he wanted to do this. And if you look at the chain of events that took place from 2014 until now, you can see it was pretty messy. It wasn't like there was some grand design and some cabal was sitting there saying, we're going to make this whole thing interact the way it is. We talked to a lot of people. We talked to Jacques Vallée, for instance. Vallée has excellent connections as well. He might say, why don't you go and talk to this guy? And somebody will say, go and talk to this guy. It wasn't like there's this coordinated effort between Bigelow and DOD and To the Stars. These are people who've had these connections, absolutely. But at the same time, they're forming this organization in order to move the ball down the field a little bit and to start getting some of this stuff released and some of the information analyzed by people who are best set to do it. And that doesn't necessarily mean within the military-industrial complex. That's why it's a public corporation. That's why people can, buy shares and they have meetings twice a year, or they have meetings once a year and reports twice a year, whatever the SEC wants. This is a whole different ballgame. And we're not going to say to people like Hal Puthoff and all the others, because you've been a contractor for the government, you're suspect, therefore we can't talk to you. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. Disclosure has to come from these people. It has to come from people who have the knowledge inside the military-industrial intelligence complex. How does all this work? How does it tie together? And that's what they're trying to do. And that's been, the nature of my communications with them.
Let me just bring up a little point here that on May 18th at 9:45 in the morning, and it kind of disappeared, but I found it. To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences accomplished incredible things since October. My team is steadily briefing multiple committees in Congress, some at the classified level. Okay, so he's saying, now, again, Tom has no clearance and has no real ties. He's more of just a PR guy that I highly question the way he's handled some of this. I think they need a chief of staff, me personally, because of the mess ups. But he says now that this team is briefing Congress at a classified level. Exactly what does that mean, Peter?
Again, I'm not part of the classification meetings. I don't know what meetings are being held with whom. Tom does not have, as far as I know, a security clearance, neither do I. So there's going to be stuff that's going to be discussed that neither he nor I will be party to. So for that reason alone, I'm not going to know any more details than that.
Well, yeah, but here's the
by
point.
the same token, look down the masthead of all the members in the To the Stars Academy,
Right.
people who are actually members, right?
Right.
Those people could easily be giving briefings to members of Congress on this kind of material. Why
Which
wouldn't
means
they
they
be?
still have their clearance. They're still working inside the government in some capacity. Otherwise, they wouldn't have access to these classified briefings.
From what I understand, okay, take the example of I don't know who, Chris Mellon. Okay, here's a guy that we know is not working in the government anymore. As far as we know, he's out, right? And I've met him, nice guy, doesn't seem to have anything that's ongoing except that people who have worked on these projects in the past still cannot discuss them, without a skiff, right? They can't discuss them without, talking to other people who have similar clearances. So there's always going to be a slight disconnect between what these guys know and what I know, right? And it's going to be gradually released as they are able to gradually release material. To the Stars itself is not holding anything back. We're not sitting on a whole bunch of stuff and we're sort of dripping it out little by little. That's not how this works. That's not what we're about. But the material that is coming out will be dripped out by someone else, by some other agency, by DOD or whatever, going through the declassification process, which, as you know, can be long and tedious. So more than, if you're going to ask me who's getting briefed by whom, I have no idea. If you're going to ask me, does that seem sinister? No, it doesn't seem sinister. It happens in Washington every single day.
I don't think it seems sinister. What I'm saying is this factual? Are they right now on Capitol Hill briefing members of Congress?
I don't have a clue. I'm not part of that process.
Okay. But obviously Tom must be, because he put that in the press release.
Tom would know about it, yeah. He
Okay.
would know more about this than I would, yes.
All right. The second part that his announcement he made was, we have initiated the beginning of a major aerospace partnership and started scope of work, okay, for space-time metric engineering. Do you know anything about that?
I believe that involves, if I'm not mistaken, I think Hal was involved with the space-time metric engineering. I know that Steve Justice is working on some of the aerospace propulsion and energy aspects of this thing as well. Hal has a background in that as well. Naturally, Steve Justice from Skunk Works. More than that, I couldn't tell you.
Okay, so both of these statements that were made, you're not sure if it's factual or not, or you, as far as you haven't been told about it, is I guess what I'm trying to get at.
I mean, from my point of view, they're factual, but as far as being able to prove it and to give you more detail or information, no, I can't.
Okay. If you can't give me total information or more information other than this, was that one of their goals, to get these briefings?
The goal really was less to give briefings to the government than to release material and create public awareness of this material. As I said at the event, at the Contact in the Desert thing, numerous times, at the risk of sounding really snarky, this whole To the Stars thing is not about the UFO community. It's about the outside world that always ridiculed the UFO community. So what the purpose was behind To the Stars was to get this out in front of the general public and legitimize the study of ufology, legitimize the study of this phenomenon, so we can get more people on board, reduce the giggle factor, not have people lose their tenure because they talk about UFOs and all the rest of it, and get more people involved in it on another level. Otherwise, it just stays within the UFO community. So this was not designed for the UFO community to take anything away from them or to attack the UFO community or to somehow influence the UFO community. That's the furthest thing from the truth.
And you had said at the panel to me, you said, I feel like I have been walking around with a target on your back.
Oh, yeah. Well, because there was so much hostility directed at To the Stars by the UFO community. There was only one gentleman in the place wearing a To the Stars T-shirt, and I felt I really had to go up and talk to him and say, "Are you crazy? Or what are you doing?" And but he was, he's very proud of the whole thing, and he thinks that Tom and the rest of the group is doing an admirable job, being very ambitious, obviously. But yes, there's been a lot of pushback, a lot of hostility. The To the Stars is a disinformation cabal, and I'm a disinformation agent, and on and on and on. So, and there's been a lot, of course, in social media, just people saying all kinds of stuff and quote unquote debunking everything that comes along. It's the To the Stars people themselves in general are really focused on something else. They're focused on the outside world. They're focused on getting this out into the mainstream in the best possible way, and getting legitimate sources of funding, for instance, and all the rest of it. There's a very ambitious program if you look at the website. So, and this is something that Tom said to me from the very beginning in 2014, at the end of 2014, when he asked me to get on board with this and told me what his scope was, what he was planning to do. The first thing I told him was, man, you're going to get enormous pushback from the UFO community. They're not going to like this at all. You're an outsider, and you have enough money to make a splash with this, and you're not part of the cult or the in-group or the clique around the UFO community. And he said, well, I can't say what he said on the air. Basically, he said, screw it. We're going to let the chips fall where they may. Our job is to knock on doors. He famously told me, knock on doors and do whatever we have to do to get somebody to talk to us. And that's how we started in 2014. And, as what happened in 2015, what Tom was talking about, he's talking to, high level people in the government and everything else, and everyone laughed at him. Everybody thought he was making stuff up. And then the inevitable, the WikiLeaks dump, and then suddenly everybody realized that Tom wasn't making anything up.
Because said that he was communicating with John Podesta before the election and introducing some of his military advisors.
Well, I don't know about the introducing military advisors part. The John Podesta thing was one isolated contact. The military advisors were all different contacts that Tom had developed through talking to a lot of people, and then us doing a lot of writing and doing that famous prologue to the Secret Machines book, Secret Machines Gods. That prologue became what Tom likes to call our mission statement. Mm-hmm. And that went to a lot of people, and that generated a lot of interest, and people started to take us seriously. They saw we weren't spinning stories. We weren't talking about aliens building the pyramids or anything like that. We were trying to analyze the UFO phenomenon from a sort of an academic and very rationalistic point of view, accepting as the premise that the UFO phenomenon is real. Therefore, if it is real, how has the rest of our culture been affected all these thousands of years? And that was how this project started. When they saw that, and when Vale saw it, and a lot of other people saw it, they said, "Okay, you guys you're on the right track. This is a very high level, sort of highbrow approach to the problem," and they kind of appreciated it. And they began to work with us and to recommend other people if they didn't have the information. And it went around and around, and eventually we developed a kind of following.
And what I was referencing in the WikiLeaks was it was a communication about Podesta and Tom DeLonge setting up a Skype meeting. And that's right. Where he was going to introduce, I believe, McCaslin to Podesta through Skype. And that was a reinforcement that this was happening in January of 2016, but we didn't learn about it until the end of the year.
Right. And we actually interviewed Podesta in July of 2015. So we had done that in Washington, D.C. So we had already been talking to him directly and interviewed him. I was able to speak with him as well. So we were all talking and asking questions about the declassification process, about UFO secrecy, about how governments handle it, about what the president could know or not know. So it was a very good conversation in as far as he could talk about it. But he gave us a lot of very good pointers, and I'm very grateful for that for that interview, because it clarified a few things for us as to how things work in Washington.
And, you know, I think it is worth pointing out that at about the time that the New York Times article came out, that Eric Davis, who works for Hal Puthoff, who is an electrical engineer and a physicist and is the one who founded the Institute for Advanced Studies in Austin and has been involved with the UFO phenomena, remote viewing, and all kinds of facets of this since going back to the late 1950s, early 1960s in Stanford. And one of the people who works for him is Eric Davis, who's an astrophysicist. And in commenting about the December 16th, 2017 headlines, Eric Davis said that what is in the videos is not human. It's not natural. It's under artificial control. We don't know where it comes from, but it's here and has been here for some time, close quote. That was a strong statement from an astrophysicist.
Absolutely. And that's been our position from the very beginning, from 2014. It's been our position that this is non-human, that it's been here for a long time. And all the other things that Eric Davis said. This has been our position. We started on that premise. We're not building towards that conclusion like a lot of people in the community are. They're looking for proof. They're looking for all the rest of it. The big philosophical difference between To the Stars, I think, and a lot of people who are really interested in the UFO field is that we're not looking to prove anything at this point. We think it's been proven. You know, we're not going to write a bunch of books about UFO sightings. There's thousands of them. It just does not contribute anything from our point of view for us to do that. We're not talking to the people who already are convinced about UFOs. What we're saying is we're starting from the point of view of this is proven. It's an accepted fact. Now what? And that's how To the Stars really started. It's now what? Okay, if it's real, now what? How does that affect how we look at science? Not just science, but the arts, culture, religion, philosophy, sociology, anthropology, you name it. We would have to go back and review what we've already done, the kind of work that's already been done all across the ages in different civilizations and cultures, and say, plug in the missing link, plug in the UFO, and how does that change everything? And that's been the position that we've taken. So that's one of the reasons why there's a lot of people in the UFO community, I think, who are sort of confused and puzzled by this. But it's a new approach. And it's a new approach politically, you could say, because we're going outside. We're going to the mainstream. We're going to people who never took this seriously, and we're convincing them and getting them on board and making it easy for them to study this. So, yes, it is non-human. I'm 100% convinced of that. You know, and people have been trying to say, well, you guys are saying it could be the Russians or the Chinese. No, what we're saying is that those are the things we had to eliminate in the beginning. Were they Russians or Chinese, right? Was this an inimical force? Was this a hostile entity that was penetrating our airspace? Did the Russians have some sort of technology we didn't know? And I think that we're safe to say at this point that that is not true. It is not man-made technology, and we're starting from that premise, from that assumption.
And I have in my hands the 2-inch Secret Machines, Gods, Man, and War, an official Secret Machines investigation of the UFO phenomena by Tom DeLonge with Peter Levenda, a foreword by Dr. Jacques Vallée. And in this book, you brought the lens of having, like when natives would be looking at airplanes flying over them, let's say during World War I or World War II, and they would then build planes. That is cargo cult is what it's called.
Right.
Can you explain why you wanted to bring the cargo cult lens to this?
Sure. I think that as somebody who studied religion and anthropology for a time, the cargo cult thing is fascinating because it's kind of a template for, I think, human civilization in general. And the people in Papua New Guinea and in the South Sea Islands during World War II saw these planes landing. It could be the Japanese, it might have been the British, the Americans, whatever. And they saw planes landing and all kinds of goodies coming out, the cargo. And they had never seen Papuans before. They had never seen, Japanese, British, or Americans before. They'd never seen that type of clothing, the equipment, the radios, all the technology. This was just bang in the middle of their life. They had no context for it. And all they could do is create a religion around it. Our position, especially in the prologue of the book, which sets this all out, is that our religions started the same way. First, there's an event, then there's the myth. Myths don't grow in the absence of something to explain. Myths explain events. And from our perspective, there had to have been an event which jump-started all of these religions around the world, number one. But back in those days, religion, science, and art was all the same thing. There was no categorization. There were no separate boxes. So your religion, your culture, your language, your art, your science, your mathematics, all of this was tied together. It was one piece. Later, things got divided, especially in the West, things got divided into a million pieces. However, our position is that science had the same origins as religion. And our scientists today are all focused on the kinds of technology that would either prolong life, essentially grant immortality, or go to the stars. So it's the same goals that religions have, right? Religions are looking for life after death, immortality, and there's a tremendous emphasis on the sky gods and going to the stars and going to the planets. I made a presentation at Contact regarding Scientology and Mormonism, basically two American religions that are heavily influenced by ideas of extraterrestrial life and going to the stars and going to the planets, even though they began as religions and as occult practices, actually. So our position is the cargo cult is not just about religion, it's religion and science. Our science is also part of this cargo cult. We're all motivated by the same ideas: longevity, immortality, getting off the planet, going to the stars. And how did that start? After 200,000 years of Homo sapiens sapiens wandering around, fat and happy, suddenly we all decide we're all around the world, we're going to start building cities and civilizations and go absolutely nuts. Always with this focus on the heavens, always with the heavens. So either it's ancient Egypt or ancient Sumer or ancient China or Mexico, all of these structures are aimed towards the stars with a heavy idea about astral travel and the gods coming down from the stars, the gods giving us education, telling us all these remarkable things. So our position is there was contact at some point on this planet. We think that's a very good possibility because it would start to explain everything that happened after.
Well, one thing I've been trying to study more is that when you go deeper into Anunnaki, which once upon a time was presented as mythology of gods on Earth, and then you find that if you have Anunnaki, there were the Anunnana, that's Anunnana, and that they are now being considered the original prime origin life behind the extraterrestrial bodies that were the Anunnaki, not mythology. And when I first talked with Tom DeLonge back in January of 2016 on two very long phone discussions, he came to me because I have dealt in my own work with the issue of going back into biblical literature and other religious literature where there are people on the ground looking up at beings that they don't recognize, and that it is Tom and I were talking about what a good way it might be to break open the headline, "We're not alone in the universe," and never have been, because we've had waves, literal waves and cycles of advanced intelligences using our solar system and our planet way long before the first primate ever stood up. That there have been waves of other civilizations, maybe going back 1 billion years. And I thought that that was a good way to approach coming into the general world audience. I'm curious what you think about waves of other civilizations using the solar system, and why there was a change when the books finally started coming out from that to the break toward infrared video from jet fighters.
Well, there's a lot there to explain, Linda.
Well,
where do I begin?
start with the Anuna and the Anunnaki as being waves of civilizations way before Lucy in Africa.
Well, yeah, I mean, in the second book that's coming out in the Secret Machines, the nonfiction series, it's Secret Machines Man. It's God's Man and War. Man is Volume 2. I go into a lot of discussion about this, and I go into a lot of discussion about the genetic code. Whether or not there were waves of different races coming here or not, I don't know. I would need a lot more proof. You know me, Linda. I need documents and stone tablets or something before I feel comfortable.
That's why you are good. I agree with you. We need facts. Well, let's speculate.
Well, the genetic code is a good signpost for this because, as you know, and I think as we've discussed and as I've talked about in other places, Francis Crick, who was the co-discoverer of the double helix shape of the DNA molecule, was of the firm belief that the DNA molecule did not come from this planet, right, that it could not have originated spontaneously or accidentally or quote unquote evolved on this planet. It just would have been impossible. I think it was he who compared it to throwing a bunch of rocks in a box and shaking it and a Chevrolet drives out. His idea was that it came here from somewhere else. But not only that it came here from somewhere else, like accidentally maybe by a meteor or something hitting the Earth with some microbes on it, he believed that it was directed, that this planet was specifically chosen to be seeded with basically the RNA molecule that would eventually develop into the DNA molecule. He thought that it had come from elsewhere in the first place, that we are all basically children of somewhere else. We're descended from some other life form from some other planet. And that was Francis Crick. He won the Nobel Prize, right, for his discovery of the DNA helix. Then
you're talking about panspermia, which the chemist August Arrhenius in 1908 got the Nobel Prize then for proposing panspermia. And then after the Watson Crick, after he got the Nobel Prize, he worked with Orgel in San Diego and did for Icarus a brilliant paper saying for exactly what you're saying, that it did not make sense on an 8,000 mile diameter, 25,000 mile circumference planet that there would be exactly the same double helix everywhere, and that they agreed with August Arrhenius that life on this planet came from a DNA molecule planted, and that what the astronomers would say it might come in on a comet. Well, paralleling this is since the 1950s have been people in the abduction syndrome who say they've been told or even shown with holograms that non-humans have been mixing and matching genes that they have introduced to the planet for millennia.
Well, it's certainly something to consider because the contactees seem to be kind of, I wouldn't say unanimous, but this is a theme that runs through a lot of the abduction experiences. And I think for that reason, it's worthwhile to really look at it. Now, a religious studies scholar may look at it and, try to frame it in their own terms, right? In the terms of religion and perhaps in psychology. But then you have a geneticist who may look at it a different way. And then you'll have a physicist who will look at it from a different way. And I think that's the problem. That's what we need right now. We need all these different types of individuals working on this problem because the truth may be buried right there. It may be buried in our genetic code itself. And as a couple of Russians in Kazakhstan laid out in one of their several papers they put out recently, they feel that the origin of the genetic code is actually encoded in the code itself, that the proof that it was designed by an intelligence somewhere is actually built into the genetic code because of the start and stop codes, which wouldn't make sense as a natural phenomenon, but would make sense if it had been designed, by an artificial intelligence or by a native intelligence or something like that.
And Peter, that is exactly the point that my artificial intelligence program at Contact evolves to, that androids, or let's go back to artificial intelligence. The definition of artificial intelligence is code that writes its own code. And then it writes its own backup code. And what we are experiencing on our planet right now is a rush where AI is even depositing code in the cloud and around the planet to back itself up that humans have not been able to find or crack. And that if you have code making code that then goes to androids, technically humanity is probably android made for an intelligence that wanted us to do something on this earth for them.
Well, again, that's a theme I carry on in Volume 2 of The Secret Machines, which should be out towards the end of the year. I go into this idea of who's really the android here and who's really the alien, and what is a machine. I mean, the whole overall arching theme of this is secret machines. So, what is a machine really? There was a lot of philosophy written around the turn of the century where people were freaking out by machines. They didn't know what machines meant in the grand scheme of things. Was there a place in religion for machines? What do they do? They extend our senses. They extend our capabilities into other realms. We can land on the moon from here. That's an extension of our consciousness using a machine. So are we, with artificial intelligence, getting so close to the point where we're going to recognize that maybe we're the aliens?
Yeah, well, we are the aliens androids. After this break, let's pick this up.
And thank you, Linda, John, and Peter. This 50-minute uninterrupted segment and next hour's uninterrupted segment is brought to you by OnlineVibes.com, your personal connection to mind, body, spirit, committed to connecting you with healing modalities that can manifest a true and healthy change in your life. Visit the website at onlinevibes.com. That's vibes with a Z. Tonight's special guest, Peter Levenda, will be back with Linda and John right after these messages.
Hi, it's AJ from Vibes, Mind, Body, Spirit. Have you been searching for unique items to create or add to your sacred space? What about tools for your holistic healing? Or those one-of-a-kind magical ingredients to manifest your desires? Well, look no more, because Vibes has a variety of items to assist you in your spiritual journey. From crystals to candles, incense to books, tapestries to jewelry, OnlineVibes.com has what you're seeking. We even have some thoughtful and mindful gifts to share with your friends and family too. Visit us at OnlineVibes.com from the comfort of your home, or give us a call at 385-244-1099 to have your order beautifully packaged and sent directly to you or a loved one. And right now, take advantage of the coupon code KGRA at checkout to receive 15% off any order. Remember, online, VIBEZ.com.
Hi, this is Matt Ray for My Pillow. Look, I'd forgotten what a good night's sleep was like. Then I got a hold of My Pillow. I used to wake up with neck and shoulder pain. I thought it was the new normal. But after one night of using My Pillow, my neck and shoulder pain is gone, and I'm sleeping comfortably through the night. My Pillow's patented interlocking fill conforms to your personal sleep needs. It's guaranteed not to go flat. It's washable, it's dryable, and it's made in the USA, not to mention the 10-year warranty. Try it risk-free with a 60-day money-back guarantee. What have you got to lose besides back pain and shoulder pain? Right now, America's First News has a great deal. Try it for yourself. Call now. You'll get 50% off a 4-pack. That's 2 premium pillows and 2 travel pillows. Call now, 800-716-4835. Use the promo code RAY, R-A-Y. That's 800-716-4835. Use the promo code RAY.
People are waking up. They're standing up to those pushing pesticides and GMOs as safe alternatives for a starving world. What a bunch of crap! I tell you, I'd rather eat dirt. So, I drink Life Change Tea. It's an herbal drink, cleansing my body of toxic sludge and nasty chemicals, and of course, ridding the intruders that are hidden in my so-called food. And by the way, Life Change Tea is non-GMO and organic. No fillers, no yuck. Just a great defense against you-know-what. May the supplement force awaken you. Don't fall to the dark side. Oh, Sorry, I went to the movies last night. Anyway, enough said. How do you get that herbal drink and change your life? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. You will awaken, you will get stronger, and you might even lose a bit of weight. So awaken to Life Change Tea and the many one-of-a-kind supplements at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. May the supplement force be with you.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRARadio.com.
Welcome back to Phenomenon Radio Live right here on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Station. Before we begin hour 2 of our interview with tonight's special guest, Peter Levenda, it's time for the news brought to you by Earthfiles.com. Here's Linda Moulton Howe. Linda?
Thanks, Bill. NASA held a live streaming press conference today on June 7th, 2018, to announce that the Curiosity rover on Mars has confirmed both seasonal methane and organic molecules. Will evidence of life be next? The Curiosity rover dug down 2 inches into the Martian soil of Gale Crater on the red planet's equator, where water once flowed in such abundance that it carved channels in the 3-mile-high Mount Sharp at the center of the crater, as well as in the circular crater wall that spans a circumference and a diameter 96 miles across. That's why Gale Crater is a logical target to look for signs of life, past and present. The Curiosity rover was able to heat the Gale Crater samples to between 932 and 1,508 degrees Fahrenheit in order to study the organic molecules released through gas analysis. The organic molecules and volatiles have now been confirmed to be very similar to sedimentary rocks rich in organics on Earth, such as thiopene and dimethyl sulfide. Mars research scientist Jen Eigenbroder, PhD at Goddard Space Flight Center in Maryland, told the live stream audience, quote, "Finding ancient organic molecules in the top 5 centimeters of rock that was deposited when Mars may have been habitable with water bodes well for us to learn the story of organic molecules on Mars with future missions that will drill deeper," close quote. And Michael Meyer, PhD, lead scientist for the Mars exploration program at NASA headquarters, added, "Are there signs of life on Mars? We don't know, but these results tell us we are on the right track," close quote. The fact that Gale Crater had running water some 3 billion years ago means that the recent discovery of these organic molecules in methane reinforces the expectation that some kind of life did exist on Mars. Next up, in 6 months, on November 26, 2018, NASA's InSight lander that was launched on May 5th, 2018, will land for a 2-year mission to search for evidence that NASA describes as, quote, "geologically alive on the surface or below the surface," close quote. Mars has the largest volcanoes and the biggest canyon in the solar system. So one of the missions of that lander will be to search for still active Martian earthquakes. Each time a quake happens on Mars, it will give InSight a snapshot of the planet's interior. The InSight team estimates the spacecraft will see between a couple dozen to several hundred quakes over the course of the 2-year mission. The more quakes, the clearer Martian interior details will become. One challenge will be getting a complete look at Mars using only one location. Most seismology on Earth takes measurements from multiple stations. InSight will have the planet's only seismometer, and that will mean scientists will have to parse the data in creative ways. Bruce Bannert, InSight's principal investigator at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in Pasadena, says, quote, "We have to get clever. We can measure how various waves from the same quake bounce off things and hit the station at different times to build up our picture of Mars' interior," close quote. This is Linda Moulton Howe. Please stay tuned to Earthfiles news updates on KGRA Radio and visit every day my science, environment, and real X-Files news website, earthfiles.com, for more on breaking stories about our universe, this solar system, and the planet we live on.
Thank you, Linda. And that's the news brought to you by earthfiles.com. And now back to the interview. Here's Linda Moulton Howe. Linda?
You know, Peter, during the break, we were talking about the now becoming better known Ronald Reagan briefing at Camp David, March 6th to 8th, 1981, that was released in the Serpo material on the web in 2007. I have somebody in Washington who has helped me a great deal and so far has always been accurate. And he said, I can confirm that there was a briefing for Ronald Reagan with Casey and some NSA DIA officials, March 6th to 8th, 1981, at Camp David about non-humans. Now, what we were saying in the break was that in that list that was presented to Reagan of the types that we've been dealing with, that Casey, the newly appointed CIA director by Reagan, had 5, and the top one was the acronym EBEN, all caps, for extraterrestrial biological entity. And Casey and his caretakers and other intelligence people there explained to President Reagan, who had been in office only since January 20th, and this was March 6th to 8th, that the next 2 on the list, archeloids and quadloids, were essentially androids, mixed and matched genes by the EBENs to create different life forms that would then be put, like, let's say, in a solar system far away from the home planet of the EBENs, and then the other group might be put in another galaxy, and that there would be a spread of the EBEN territory and control of, we'll call it geography in the universe, by making androids and clones and perhaps even cyborgs and extending them through the universe. And why was this so relevant for Ronald Reagan and for all of us tonight on this program? The implication is that the Anunnaki were a civilization from someplace else that inhabited our planet for some period of time, even warred here, maybe even with bombs that left trinitite in the sands of Mesopotamia, and are gone from our point of view. And we grew up being told by power brokers that we humans were the only life in the universe, that we were unique, and that this is Earth planet was special. Today, everything is being revolutionized much more toward the idea that there is life throughout the universe, and it makes androids, and it makes cyborgs, and it makes clones, and that we right now are at the intersection on Earth science to start using AI to make our own androids, our own cyborgs, maybe even clones, to go into space travel, because the human body of flesh and blood is so frail. What do you think?
Well, the very last part of your question, or your statement rather, that's true, that if we would create some kind of robotic form, an android, or a cyborg, which would be sort of half human and half machine, because of the stresses of space travel, which would take years and years and years to go from planet to planet, if we were constrained by that type of technology. Now, the UFO itself, just take the Tic Tac as an example, and that's why it's so valuable, I think, to look at it and to study it more carefully. It does not seem to be bound by the laws of the special theory of relativity, which says that nothing can really travel faster than the speed of light. These things seem to be able to travel extremely fast and making maneuvers that would kill a human being if they were inside of it. So, 2 points. Maybe they're not. Maybe there's no organic life form inside of those machines. Right. Or the second part is, maybe they travel faster than the speed of light. Yes, Hal has been working, over the years. Hal's been doing this since at least 1970 that I know of. So 1970 until now is quite a long period of time that he's been involved in this kind of research. So he's covered a lot of different areas.
Now, okay. Peter, I have a question for you with Hal, okay?
Sure.
That was hinted in the Tom DeLonge release, and then I want to do a follow-up after we talk about this paper for a minute. In 2000 or February 2012, through Cornell University, Hal wrote a paper called Advanced Space Propulsion Based on Vacuum Spacetime Metric Engineering. Are you aware of that paper?
I haven't read it. I'm aware.
That goes into the theory of warp drive, and the race for interstellar travel. And the thing is there's been like tit for tat being played right now to include, like, if you look at what Tom just put out and is released a couple of weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, where they're working with these different defense companies and stuff like that. And one of the things that I've talked to Hal about is he really does, and he really is, it believes that they can put together the ability to do interstellar travel through warp drive.
Right.
So he's working on that. Now, here's kind of what I wanted to kind of go at, because I know I came at you hard early in the show, but I think you summed it up like this. You said, To the Stars is not really worried about ufology overall. They're trying to hit the mainstream audience. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, what I said was we're concerned about the mainstream audience. Absolutely. It's not that we're not being snarky where the UFO community is. That's just not where our focus is. That's right.
Right. So you're focusing in on a narrow, not a larger band of people. But here's where this is interesting, and that's what I kind of was trying to make my point early on. You have you and Tom, who has no security clearance. You said that during, my questioning.
Right.
And then you have all these guys that have worked in different projects through the years, like for Hal, he ran Stargate. He's been deep into the military. He's, the DOD, worked on these projects, worked inside the DIA and other agencies. And they have had access to all this different information. A lot of it probably is still classified. And I say probably because I've not seen the information either. But you have you guys working on one end. And as you said earlier, you and Tom got together and you brought in some military advisors, which I don't know has ever been explained totally how you got access to them, but you did. Then you got the attention of Podesta. You've got to talk to him, and you've got these guys on your team. Now you have a group of people that have had access to different types of documentation and programs, and they have the know, and including Davis, who's worked on some of this, who said they're not from here. Okay, so it's a little confusing, I think, to not only the people in the UFO end or the ufology part, and even the mainstream people is, number one, I'd like to know who's really has the final say in To the Stars. Is it you and Tom, or is it these guys that have been involved in these classified programs? And number two, have they ever told you, even if they can't tell you exactly what documents or programs, or if there's what, how far deep they're classified still or everything else, have they ever told you there are documents that would go past the confirmation stage and would lead to disclosure? Because I think that's part of the problem here. You've got the right and left hand that doesn't seem to always be able to talk to each other for different reasons.
Okay, I'll answer the first part of the question. Is the person who's in charge of To the Stars is Tom DeLonge. He's the guy who has the final say in anything that's going on. And remember that it's pretty ambitious what To the Stars is trying to do. So you have the entertainment end of it, you have the science end. You have me writing the books, and you have Andrew Hartley writing the novels. So you have a number of people all working in different areas. But it's not just a bunch of stovepipes. We're kind of talking to each other to make sure that we're not saying things that are not true, or that we're not saying things that we shouldn't say as far as security is concerned and all the rest of it. So everybody is in their area of expertise, but Tom is making the decisions as to where the company is going to go and what's going to happen. He cannot make decisions as to what's going to be declassified. As I said before, he has no control over that. So he just waits to see what comes out. He may have an idea as to what's coming. He may have an idea what's in the pipeline, but more than that, he doesn't know. He doesn't know the actual material, as far as I know. So that's number one. The second part of your question, remind me for a second, because
I was going down the lines of you've had military advisors,
right?
You talked to Podesta.
Yeah.
You're dealing with these guys, and just like Kyle Putoff, who's even actually ran the Stargate program and has been pretty deep inside the DoD and some of these programs and has clearances. Have they, whether, and I'm not asking for exact programs or documents, but do you believe, based on the people that you've talked to and the broad scope of them, that there are documents that they're aware of and there's information that they have that would take this from confirmation to disclosure?
Okay, nobody's said that to me bluntly or quite that bluntly, but the intimations are there that there is more there, and that if you put all of the pieces together, you're going to have what amounts to a disclosure, but it's in pieces. From what I understand, there's a piece here, there's a piece there. There isn't one big box someplace that has everything in it. These guys work within, again, their own areas of expertise. And they're very cautious, right? Hal is very cautious. He's a scientist. He's a cautious kind of guy. The others are all the same way. And they're the same way whether they have security clearances or not, or they've signed NDAs or not. These guys are cautious about what they're revealing and how they're revealing it. But it's not up to them to do the revealing. It's up to the government, basically, to do it. So they are working, and they are working with the government and with whoever has these documents and this information to release it as much as possible. For instance, Harry Reid just recently said to a reporter that if you really wanted disclosure, all you have to do is look at all the documents that are already out there. He was not being snarky on that. He was just saying the stuff is there. You have to go and digest it and look at it. Everybody's looking for a smoking gun, and I think that might be the problem. Everybody's looking for the ultimate, classified document that's going to answer the question once and for all. And it's quite possibly not going to come out that way. It's going to be a gathering of different documents from different disciplines that actually put together the picture. It's the 9 blind men and the elephant. And I think that's what this really is more like. Everybody's approaching this at their own speed. So here you have Hal Puthoff talking about warp drives, and about 0-point energy. That's critical. And then you have other people working on the biology and on the genetics, like Gary Nolan. And you have, Eric Davis and all these guys working on their own end of it, all with an assumption. And that's what I feel from having talked to many of them, all based on the assumption that this is real, this is not human, and this has been coming and going for some time. The question that Linda brought up at the very beginning about, the Ebens and the different races and all the rest of it.
Right.
If we're at the moment, and we're very close, I think, Lou Elizondo said we're not that far away from developing the type of propulsion system or the type of aeronautics that the UFOs exhibit. If we are that close to it, to that, we're close to understanding also the story behind, as you've been told, different races going here, going there, colonizing, decolonizing. Would we, as humans, if we had access to the kind of artificial intelligence that you're talking about and that you're worried about, and frankly, so am I. If we have access to ZPE, 0-point energy, and we have access to a kind of warp drive, if we had all of these things, and we're close to having them, as Ray Kurzweil talks about it as the singularity or the convergence. If we're at that point, right, we're becoming that which we are looking for.
That's right.
So how do we handle it? The big question is we're looking in the wrong place, and I think we're all being distracted. We got to pull back a little bit before we can understand what it is, what they are. We have to understand who we are right now, because at this juncture of history, we're undergoing a paradigm shift, and I hate to use that term because it's misused, but we are at that point. We are going to step over into something. We're not prepared as far as I'm concerned. So, yes.
It's what Philip J. Corso, the lieutenant colonel, before he died in 1998, he had signed his book the day after Roswell to me and said, Linda, when I was at White Sands and I was with knowledge dealing with other intelligences there, he said, I had a telepathic download from a tall alien, and it was, "There is a new world coming if you can take it." And that has been a theme. Whitley Strieber has talked with me about that as well. And that where we are is this intersection where we are discovering that we are somebody else's androids set in motion. And when will we meet our makers?
Well, that's one way of looking at it, looking on a very linear timeline. But what if there is such a thing as a warp drive that we develop? There is zero-point energy. What if we violate the rules of space and time? What if we are our makers?
Well,
that's very interesting, Peter. And then my next question to you is, the three things that To the Stars said they were going to try to accomplish was videos, technology that we hold, and the experiencers. The second part, as far as technology we hold, do we, because there's been hints and some of these briefings may have had, do we hold technology that we've uncovered one way or another that you're aware of?
Well, I'm not, you see, Linda knows me, and she knows that I don't come out with statements on which unless I'm really pretty sure of what I'm going to say, and I have some kind of foundation or background. So I cannot tell you with absolute certainty that we hold, captured technology or however we obtained it, that we have alien quote unquote technology. I think, however, that if we take the Tic Tac video as an example, just because everybody knows about it, and we look at that and we watch it and we gauge what it did and all the other reports that came out, because those things followed the Nimitz for like a week, and there were more of them. If we just look at that, we have actually captured the technology. We're looking at it. We're seeing it. We're seeing it with all of our resources, with all of our devices, with all of our sensors, with all of our electronics. We have a signature for these things, and it still defeats certain parts of our capability of detection, because we can never see these things in absolutely clear lines. We always see them a little off, a little blurry, and that may be a key to how these things operate. So this is, we may be a lot closer to this than we believe, and we may not need a piece of a Roswell saucer or something like that to get to where we want to go, because if we already had that piece, chances are we would have been there already, right?
And Peter,
but that leads to my next question, Peter.
John, just for a second, because this is important. The ionization around the craft has been one of the reasons why we have not been able to get clear images in some. And when I was investigating the bismuth, magnesium, zinc material and was at Carnegie Institute, they confirmed that bismuth, magnesium, zinc layered material emitted 60 times the amount of positive ions than the base magnesium they were using for comparison, and they did not understand that. But if it is part of a cloaking mechanism or a blurring mechanism, that might be why that occurred.
That's right. I mean, I agree, and I think that Jacques Vallée, in the presentation he gave last year at Contact in the Desert, was talking about some of the weird metallurgical characteristics of the pieces he had been examining all this time. And, it was very scientific, and I think it went over the heads of a lot of people who were in the room. But here he is talking about materials that could not have been made on Earth using our technology the way we have it today. So this may be part of what's at Bigelow's operation. They may be going over this sort of thing. I don't know for sure, but I'm just thinking that's probably what they're talking about when they talk about materials. So, a cloaking device of some kind, or maybe it's not even deliberately a cloaking device. Maybe it's just because their physics and ours, there's that little off center there. They're doing something that we don't know can be done, and therefore our sensors cannot see what we're not set up to see.
And there is this. I'll just throw this out, and then John, take it away. And there is this big piece, which is self-activating software, in which the craft is the machine, is the software, is the computer, that they don't need organic, intelligent life. These are machines that can travel the universe, and they literally are self-activating.
Well, there you go. Now you're in my secret machines territory.
Okay, Peter, I guess my question is this.
Yeah.
Have we established these are craft? Is that pretty much what they feel, that they're dealing with some kind of unknown craft?
Okay. The problem with this is that we project a lot of, the word craft has a lot of baggage associated with it. If you mean, is it something that's carrying another person, or is someone inside of it flying around in it?
No, I just meant, let's just take, for simple purposes, you have a aircraft. Doesn't mean there's anybody in it. It's being remote like a drone. Have they established this is like a craft itself, though, they feel?
I guess I could say yes. I mean, in as far as maybe a Frisbee is a craft, we're using our own ideas, but we're imposing it on what this thing is. Let's just say yes. Most people, and I think the scientists, the engineers, are looking at these things as if they are a craft.
Okay, so then if someone has built this craft, and we think we figured out through our contact with sensors and all this other stuff, maybe they have some technology that they've recovered, whether it crashed here or they dug a site or found something else. The key would be building this besides how to drive it. And so you would need certain minerals and stuff to be able to put it together. So is that one of the possibilities why there's a drive to get to some out there in the space, even if it's conventional for now, to get these minerals to be able to build a craft like that they're observing?
It would be purely speculation on my part, but it sounds like a good solution to the problem, because so far our focus on other planets has been, is there other life? Is there life on other planets? Is there organic life? Is there life the way we interpret it, the way we understand life? And that's, to me, is a big assumption and a big mistake. But what if there's another component to this, and we're not just looking for life, we're looking for other things. We're looking for other materials, maybe non-organic, that can be used. I'll give you an example. One of the reasons that Francis Crick thought that the DNA molecule, or the RNA molecule actually, was seeded onto this particular planet, and that it had to come from somewhere else, was the presence of molybdenum, right? Yeah. The element that is kind of rare on the Earth's surface, although there's more of it in the oceans. But the DNA molecule requires it to exist, requires it to evolve and to grow. So therefore, without that element, there would be no DNA molecule.
You were talking about molybdenum, and I remember having the first time in my hands the Interplanetary Phenomenon Unit document that is now famous, and it was about an IPU government secret program that was set up, I believe, under the Truman administration. And I was told that they put an office deliberately in Colorado up where we had a large molybdenum mine. And I remember in the 80s talking with an engineer about whether we did that because the UFOs were going after that mineral, that metal in Colorado. And so now talk about the uniqueness and how it is absolutely intimate to the structure of the DNA molecule that's in all of us.
Yes, I mean, it's critical. Without it, you're not going to have DNA. So you need, if you're going to use directed panspermia, as Francis Crick was talking about, you're going to use that you're going to send the RNA material to a planet that has abundant, sources of molybdenum, because it came from your planet, which had the molybdenum. You built the RNA molecule with that chemical, with that element in mind. I mean, that was part of the creation. So you're sending it out to a planet that has to have that same material there in order for the RNA to duplicate and replicate, etc. So we have not a lot of it on the surface of the planet, but we have a lot more of it in the oceans. However, not enough for the RNA molecule to have developed on its own. So basically, the DNA that was seeded here was kind of the ignition key, to turn on the planet, basically, for the RNA molecule. That's the assumption. So what I was saying is that we tend to look at, is there life on other planets? I think we have to start thinking in other terms. Maybe we have to look at the chemical compositions of the planets, like the Mars rover is doing, and like that, and to see if there is the presence of molybdenum on the planets that we're intending to look at, to see if they would not only be able to replicate the RNA DNA molecule, but if they could have been the source ultimately of that molecule on this planet. Because wherever the DNA came from, if Francis Crick is right, and it was dropped here by someone or something, it had to have been on a planet, from a planet rich in molybdenum. They need it in order to create that molecule. So you're talking about the mines in Colorado. There may be a connection, a kind of UFO connection before that we haven't really appreciated, that it may have something to do with genetics.
Yes, and that our planet has been being mined for thousands of years by things coming in craft, because gold was also of great, great value to the Anunnaki. That's what they were mining.
I guess according to Zecharia Sitchin, that would be the case. The Anunnaki term I'm a little uncomfortable with, because it to me refers to something very specific in Sumerian religion. And we don't know too much about it. We don't really understand what the Anunnaki really represent to the Sumerians, because there's some controversy over that. But one thing is true, whether you read Sitchin or whether you read Samuel Noah Kramer or any of the godfathers of Sumerian religion, is that we, according to ancient Sumer, human beings were created. There's really no doubt about that. Human beings came about as the result of a conflict between two forces, terrestrial, maybe an extraterrestrial, or two extraterrestrial forces, however you want to look at. But the Sumerian religion is very clear on that. There was a war, and humans were created as androids, basically, composed of the blood of one of the gods and the body of another. So we were sort of composed of, like Genesis, basically. So we were composed of these substances, but the gods created us as androids, and that was the Sumerian religion. And so many other religions and cultures around the world say something similar. Nobody seems, as a point of discussion, nobody seems, in the various cultures around the world that I've studied, nobody seems to believe that humans just spontaneously evolved on the planet. There is no mythology for that. There is no religion for that. Humans were always being created by the gods or by some other force. Right. We didn't just spontaneously generate. And I think that's really important. We all seem to understand, subconsciously perhaps, that our source, the source of our life, lies elsewhere, off planet.
And Peter, you know the famous archaeologist Budge, who did so much work in Iran and Iraq in the 19th century, because he could get in there then. And I was reading some from one of his books, and he was making an observation about the capricious, mean, abusive gods to the humble humans. And he was using words like how the human Sumerians looked at their tall gods as capricious, and they were afraid of them. And there was a scene that was described in some of the Budge work about how there was this periodic request for a beautiful female virgin to walk up all of the long, long steps of a ziggurat that had a little house on the top, and that from the human point of view, the female was going to have intercourse with the god, and it was a great honor. In today's world, the view could be that it was some kind of artificial insemination program to create hybrids.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, the story that I've come across more often is that the king goes to the top of the ziggurat and meets a goddess. But same idea, I suppose. There is a New Year ceremony at the ziggurats in ancient Sumer and later in Babylon where this is done. But interestingly enough, also in some of the other places I've gone to, for instance, in Indonesia, there's a very strong myth of the Sultan of one of the major cities in Indonesia every year going down to the ocean in a special ritual, in a special place where he is supposed to meet the goddess of the Southern Ocean. And this is in a Muslim country, right, on the other side of the world from Sumer. So these things seem to be all over the place, this idea of an intercourse between humans and something not human that's involved in fertility, involved in protecting the planet, involved in protecting the city-state, whatever that happens to be. This is a theme that runs through a lot of different cultures. And again, that's what Secret Machines Gods was about, looking at the common threads that tie all of this together and assuming that, or speculating that, or proposing that this responds, or this refers to an initial point of trauma between us and them, whatever they are. This traumatic experience, this confrontation with perhaps our makers, and the understanding that we're supposed to do things a certain way, or else the makers are going to come back and slap us around. There's a famous Sumerian prayer that ends a lot of the incantations that you'll find in ancient Sumer, and it goes Zikia Kampa, Zidingir Kampa, and it means spirit of the earth, remember, spirit of the sky, remember. The idea is you're reminding the gods that were here, that you were here once, you left, and we're waiting for you to come back.
Right. And if there have been waves, I'm going to use that term, cycles of hybridization, and that would be the mixing and matching of genetic makeup from who knows what with evolving primates, then the Denisovans that are so mysterious, and some of these where there's a root that goes off, an evolutionary, it's very short and nobody knows why. Those could all be examples of continuing mixing and matching manipulation of DNA in already evolving primates, which now would be defined as Homo sapiens sapien. And recently I heard from somebody who said that they are working inside of an agency and that they were estimating that currently of the 7.2 billion population of humans, 30% were now hybrids, ET and evolving Homo sapiens sapien. And that would
like suggest, I say, yeah, go on, yeah.
Yeah, that would suggest waves of hybridization have moved through this earth, and that we are at this jump-off moment where we are rapidly moving toward AI and androids, and that's why Elon Musk and others say AI could be an existential annihilation, finally, of humanity.
Well, it's certainly a threat. Everything I've read about AI does not make me feel warm and fuzzy about it. And I know Ray Kurzweil is very warm and fuzzy about it, but I'm not particularly. I don't see this as, I think we're going too fast, quite frankly. And the idea of autonomous learning, which is the whole root of artificial intelligence, is that they're self-learning. That's one problem. But the other thing that bothers me is what if autonomous learning turns into autonomous teaching? What if AI starts to present us with a completely different way of looking at the world and way of looking at ourselves, which is really driven by the programs and not driven by anything that we would consider human or nice, something that we could appreciate, something that we could utilize. But we're being told we have to go in this direction because we're on the verge of annihilation, for instance.
And
AI as a threat, yeah.
Yeah, and AI code is always self-serving itself. It is always creating code that will back up its survival. That's what AI code does. And
the old saying, garbage in, garbage out. However AI is actually programmed or set up, it's being done by humans. And humans are fallible. Humans may not take into consideration the things that AI is going to be capable of doing. They're not going to see that far ahead. Humans are filled with hubris that we think that we can control AI when it starts running on its own. But do you really want something which does not feel emotions the way we do running things? Maybe yes. Maybe we're too screwed up, emotionally, psychologically to run this planet anymore. But do you really want to hand over the keys to a robot? That's basically what the question is.
It's the question of soul versus no soul. And right after Contact in the Desert, I went to Los Angeles to do more production with Ancient Aliens. And the producer I was working with had just come back from a shoot down in the San Diego area, where there is a robotics company that is making sex robots. And they got to see the sex robots in action. And the producer and I and the cameraman, we all found ourselves asking the same question to the air. Would you want a soulless robot to be touching your body in sex? And it almost brings to focus every single thing that people like Elon Musk and everyone else are worried about, that AI will move on and will replace us humans.
Right. I mean, people who support AI are always telling us, don't worry, it's never going to get to that. We're always going to be in charge. But I don't really feel comfortable with some of the explanations that I've heard, or some of the ways they've tried to make us feel better about it. I think there's real problems with AI. Even Henry Kissinger, of all people, came out with an article in the Atlantic not long ago, warning about the dangers, the existential threat posed by artificial intelligence. I mean, when you get Henry Kissinger and Elon Musk on the same page with Stephen Hawking, it's scary, man. It really is scary.
You're right, Peter. We got a couple minutes left. I'd like you to explain something, because ufology, Linda likes to call we're on at New Year's Eve, and disclosure could come this year, and and it'll be a new year, New Year's, Happy New Year. We've got disclosure. Where do we stand? Is this going to be a long process based because they've got to get the people inside the government to open up, or is this something that could happen in the next few months?
Okay, there's two things taking place here. Getting people inside the government to open up is one thing, and I think that getting the government to open up is to the purpose behind that is to reveal more documents, more video, which what that's going to do is it's going to make a lot of people comfortable in the outside world out there in the mainstream that this is really real. But I don't know if it's going to solve the ultimate UFO problem. I really don't know what's in the pipeline specifically. But what we're doing by doing that, when I say we in general, the TTSA people in general, is that we're getting the scientists to actually come out and start talking about their research and about their analysis of the UFO phenomenon. And that's what's going to be really very important. That's what I'm looking forward to for the rest of this year. I'm looking forward to hearing more from people like Hal Puthoff. I think he's talking at the SSE this weekend, for instance, and he's going to be talking about ATIP and all of these things. And Elizondo has been very, open about it. I mean, one of the things that scared the hell out of me with Elizondo was the way he described the Tic Tac phenomenon, knowing in advance where the Hornets were supposed to be,
right,
and waiting for them. I mean, something like this right away, that's just enough to work on for a year for me, because here I am thinking, well, how the hell did they know that? And does this say something about consciousness, or does this say something about an AI that is so sophisticated it figured out all the variables and knew where they were going to be based on an algorithm, right? I mean, these are things that already are out there that we can sort of sink our teeth into. And as more comes along, it's going to get more and more intense. And I think we're heading towards a period of greater and greater intensity where this is concerned.
Telepathy. The phenomena has always been telepathic with humans.
But here we're looking at it almost in real time. Right? Instead of a contactee talking about it, which is valid, and which I write about extensively in book 2 of the Secret Machines thing, aside from that, here are pilots flying. They know where they're supposed to be, and now so does the phenomenon. Now it's out there waiting for them. Now, like I say, is that telepathy? Is it something beyond telepathy? Is it telepathy plus AI, So, I mean, all these things are what goes through my head and the conversations that I've had with people. We're trying to get to the bottom of it, We really are.
And it is possible that the phenomena could act on its own and open it all up.
Well, yeah, we're not the only country in the world. We keep talking about disclosure like it's a United States thing. But China, Russia, freaking North Korea, too, everybody's involved in this. Everybody's been visited by the phenomenon. We are all touched by it. Disclosure could happen anywhere at any time. If you're talking about, an alien landing somewhere, it could land in Brazil for all we know.
Yeah. And Putin or Xi might go down in world history forever if they decided to bypass the United States and make the announcement that not only are we not alone, but that alien intelligences are based on this planet underground and work through our solar system and the Milky Way galaxy, and that our government and their governments know it.
Peter, one thing about
if there has been no
one thing about the interaction between the F-18 and the ship, what if the ship forced the interaction with controlling the pilot's mind to do exactly what it wanted to do?
You mean about showing up where it was going to show up?
Yeah. What if it preordained
but
it by
that's
making
determined,
the pilot do that?
That was determined by the Nimitz. The problem was that they were using encoded communications, a code that changed every 15 minutes.
Right,
So,
but what I mean,
they would have to
not necessarily the encoded part, but the fact is that they controlled the mind of the pilot to do exactly what they wanted it to do.
Well, it's possible. We're in that territory now, right? And the fact that there has been no disclosure by the Russians or the Chinese, as well as the Americans, may mean that we're all in the dark about some essential parts of this.
Right. And Peter, we just got the wrap. Sorry, we're out of time, and we've had at least 10 minutes of your time taken away by interruptions tonight. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Peter.
No
it was
worries.
fantastic. It was great.
Great. I enjoyed it. Thanks very much.
On behalf of Linda Moulton Howe, John Burroughs, and Peter Levenda, thanks for listening to Phenomenon Radio. Now stay tuned for 3 hours of Fade to Black with Jimmy Church here on the station that brings you the very best in paranormal talk radio topics on the planet, KGRAradio.com. Good night, everyone.